but let's begin with our stock of the day. Now, this is off the back of recent results. It is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC. Stock hitting a record high. It reported results fueled by demand for its advanced AI chips, reporting the highest ever monthly revenue for January of 12.7 billion US. Net revenue of 33.7 billion as fourth quarter earnings. That beat expectations. Gross margin 62.3%. Net profit margin of 48.3%. They is at record there for both. Also holding a 71% market share in the global chip market, but over 90% of the market share for the most advanced chips used in AI applications. Now, plans to allocate up to $56 billion in capital expenditure this year. That's a 40% increase on last year. Mark Moreland. It's critical, isn't it?
Taiwan Semiconductor is the ultimate choke point. So all of the high-grade chips, that means Apple, everything that XI and Musk is doing, all of them. All the hyperscalers are using 3 and 5 nanometer chips that are manufactured in Taiwan Semiconductor. I've never owned it, and the reason I never owned it before was the geopolitical risk argument, which I bought into, saying, well, if China tries to take over or we end up with a war over Taiwan, then Taiwan Semiconductor could be completely screwed. So it's an existential risk. And I've changed my mind on that now, because when I've thought about it and time's gone on, first of all, I don't think China's likely to do that because it'd be an own goal anyway. But even setting aside the likelihood, the reality is if it did happen, we would be screwed anyway, because the whole our whole growth and AI business, everything is based on chips that are coming out of Taiwan. So you can't replace that. Now, Taiwan Semiconductor is building, I think, 2 or 3 fabs. One in Europe, I think 2 in the US at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, it's about I think there's 2 in the US. Yeah.
Yep. So now they're going down to 2 nanometer now. That's the new, which Apple's bought all their production apparently for the next couple of years out of Taiwan. But the point is, it's the manufacturing in the US is off to a very slow start, and their yields and everything are way down. The costs are way higher. So it's not a matter of substitution. Now, they've been under enormous pressure by Trump administration to build fabs in the US, or even Trump suggested they move some of their foundries from Taiwan to the US, which they said no way, because it's not that easy anyway. And the reality is we are not losing our dependence on Taiwan in the next decade. It might be, maybe in a decade it might have mitigated it significantly, but so we're all in the same bucket anyway. So I think Taiwan Semiconductor is it's a brilliant business. It's brilliantly run. One of the things I don't know is how much capital they're investing in Europe and the US to build new fabs, and whether they ever get to the efficiencies of what they're doing in Taiwan, and what does that mean for capital and profitability. But at the moment, their profit margins are increasing. They can sell everything they can make. Everyone's fighting to buy them. That is not going to change, because we're in the early innings of this build out of technology. And now, of course, you've heard about the space-based data centers and so on, which is a happening and real thing based on Musk's super heavy rocket bringing the cost down so low that it's economically viable. That is going to be massive. And can you imagine how many chips are going to be? This is factors of 100 times what are being produced now. So NVIDIA, Taiwan Semiconductors, there is no risk with any of these companies. In 5 or 10 years, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these companies done 100 trillion.
That really is to the moon then, isn't it? Quite
absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got 5 trillion now. And it's so I'd say it's a buy.
Yep.
Even though it's had a good run, but its earnings are growing faster anyway. It's good.
Yeah, Mark Gardner, interesting, isn't it? Because, Mark was talking about the geopolitical risk. In fact, wargaming, the Americans, I don't know if they're on the record, but the thought is they would flatten TSMC as foundry there if the Chinese are invading, just so they can't get their hands on it. But the question is whether they actually, ahead of that, would move
that's the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard in my life, because we literally would all go back to the Stone Age in the blink of an eye. A fire in that factory was everyone says that over COVID it was really hard to get a car. That was nothing to do, well, it was partly to do with COVID, but it was way more to do with the fact that there was a fire in one part of that factory that did automobile chips, and that was the reason we were getting 18-month delays. So, I mean, I agree with the geopolitical risk, I think it is, I totally agree with the fact that it's broadly a black swan risk for all markets, not just TSM. The Taiwanese know it, and I think they'll drag their feet continuously on, even with those expansions. But opening in Europe and opening in the US is cost of doing business, because they can't hoard it all to themselves. Taiwan, interestingly, is only 8 days energy independent. So even a blockade would actually see the lights go out after about 9 days. So again, the Taiwanese know it, and they're not going to give that. They basically get the world police to look after them forever as long as that factory's there. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if they put an iron dome around it, like similar to Israel, more so than flattening it. So we bought this middle of last year, coming out of the lows on the Liberation Day, and we've added to it 2 or 3 times, and we're adding to it today. And it's still at a price earnings to growth ratio below 1, which is underpriced. It's at 0.6. So. And I just don't, for all the reasons Mark said, I just don't see it, it changing really. I mean, I think if this was a US-based business, I think, and not based in Taiwan, didn't have that geopolitical risk, I think the share price would be 3 times higher already. I think that geopolitical risk is what keeps it cheap, but this is the ultimate steady as she goes. I mean, I think there's even more risk in Nvidia, for instance. And not to say that there's risk in Nvidia, but if someone supersedes them, Taiwan Semiconductors is still going to make it. So they're the ultimate sort of bulletproof AI play overall. Absolutely buy. And you add on weakness, it'd probably be the number 1 stock to add on weakness for us almost. If there's obviously unless there's something to do with Taiwan, but in a broader market pullback, I don't see these guys going backwards very far.
That is a double buy then, compelling. For TSMC, our stock of the day.